Facebook, Uplifting Men, Transforming Lives radio show. We're on on YouTube, same name, Uplifting Men, Transforming Lives radio show, Cable TV 974. And so I just greet those persons tuning in all the way there from, we say, Grand Bahama in the north to Inagua in the south. And so even as I'm speaking, I'm inviting those of you to share the Zoom link right now, as well as text, WhatsApp your friends and tell them, tune into the program, Transforming Lives on Global 99.5, Cable TV 974. Every Sunday, 4 to 5, we here for another wonderful show. We just have an hour. Powerful young lady will share her story, and we want as many people as possible to hear it. And if you wish to give your comments or ask a question, you can simply WhatsApp me at 433-6917. You can call us at 326-0271, 326-0272. So 433-6917, that's the WhatsApp number that you can call us. And so I just want to remind you of an event coming up. My guest next week, it'll actually be on Global 99.5 later on at about 6:30. Man Up Conference, it's a conference that they're holding in the beautiful shores of Eleuthera. I want to try see if I can get down for that. That's November 12th and 13th. And of course, on the 13th of November, there should be a live broadcast for a church service for men. Of course, the women are invited, but the focus will be on men as we seek to encourage our men to lead by example. And we know the greatest example is the one that Christ sets. So that's on the November 13th, a live radio broadcast will be coming to you live from the chapel on the hill. It may be 3 to 5, or it may be also 4 to 5. I'll confirm the time tomorrow. So that radio broadcast will be live. So just want to remind those of you listening in, register for the conference in Eleuthera, Man Up, November 11th through 12th on the beautiful shores of Eleuthera. And as usual, folks, thank you for joining us today. At this point, I want to welcome Victoria Forbes joining me. I have to call you later. Patricia Wallace, Linz Jones, the Global, my good friend Gigi, my guest, Anishka, Transforming Lives radio show, myself, and of course, Dr. Leslie McMillan. I call him my spiritual father. And Dr. Mac, we will share, for those of you new on the program, Dr. Mac is a Bahamian who lives in the United States. He has been used in ministry, as well as he's the one who helped me in terms of establishing a financial plan. So they are the two biggest areas I believe in, and he was the one who would directly be responsible for guiding me, directing me along that way. Dr. McMillan, Moments with Christ. Talk to us, sir.
Good afternoon, Dave, my good friend and colleague in Christ, and to all others on the platform this afternoon.
Yes, sir.
It is always a pleasure to be able to come on and share the few minutes that you are allowing. And I have no apologies for saying what I'm going to say now. Okay. That you're allowing these 5 minutes to mention the most valuable and the most important thing on the planet.
Yes, sir.
And that is our eternal destiny.
Yes, sir.
And the basis for that statement, without apologies, is what Jesus Christ said when he was here on earth. What would it profit any individual if he or she be successful in getting whatever they want, in fact, even the entire planet, and then loses the soul? You see, there is a sentence that's been placed on this planet. When Adam and Eve sinned, it is reserved for fire, as Peter tells us in chapter 3 and verse 7.
Yes.
And when this planet burns, only persons who are off the planet will escape the burning.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, each of us ought to know and always be reminded that the only way to get off this planet is through Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And I have put all that, or encapsulates all of that, in a phrase that I call, and
Okay.
this is what is promoted on this platform. And anything that's presented is presented in this context. We ask everybody that's on to live a value-driven life
Yes. Yes.
in which value and Jesus are synonymous.
Yes, sir.
Because only when we are driven by Jesus, his direction, and all that he offers, can our lives be eternal. It's the most important thing, and that
Yeah.
is to get eternal life through Jesus Christ.
Yes,
And it is
sir.
very simple. We recognize our need, we recognize our sentence, and we surrender to him not just once, but constantly. We live that value driven life where value and Jesus are synonymous. So, and
Yes, sir.
he said it, that even in this life, it would be an abundant one. It would
Yes,
be
sir.
one with peace. It will
That's
be
correct.
one with love, where we love our fellow men as much as we love ourselves, and so forth. And then at the end, we will fall asleep. And here is the clincher. When everybody falls asleep in death, I challenge anyone to give me a solution to that other than Jesus Christ, who said that he is life and resurrection. Wow. That makes our living eternal.
Yes, sir.
And so all of our efforts, all we do, can only be summed up in that close faith, here's the key word, faith relationship with Jesus Christ. My recommendation is, do not take a chance
Yes, sir.
against what I am saying. Don't reason it away, because it's the only way. Thank you very much, sir. And we listen in this afternoon with a value-driven attitude.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I too join you in believing that the most important thing in my personal life is the eternal salvation, because when I would have gotten every and any and everything in this world, at the end of it all, the only thing will matter what happens when I die. And I also join you in believing that I better be sure now. Don't die with
Right.
hope. Yeah, make sure I die with the assurance. So, folks, I just want to thank Dr. Mark for that 5 minutes with Christ. That will be every Sunday, as long as he and I are alive. We'll have this program, and I'm sure if we die before Jackie, my co-host, Jackie will continue with the program. Today, my guest is attorney Anishka Missick, a young lady I met while in Freeport early this year with the chaplaincy department of the Bahamas Department of Corrections. We call it the prison. We met, we visited the school. I met her, and she was a guest at the conference. She spoke on the penal code. And recently she was here about 3-4 weeks ago, and she spoke at a prison conference. And she was also a guest in the studio about 2 weeks ago, I believe, 2-3 weeks ago. And she shared her story of the challenges she's facing with the court, who awarded her children to someone else. And she'll tell you, and she was not even in court. Now, unless you think, well, that's a mother, she probably was an unfit mother, or she's not working. I want to say this young lady is a lady of 17 years, a lawyer. She still works for the government. Believe in Christ like myself and Dr. Mark. And so she's here to share some of her story and to share the legal rights that as parents we're entitled to. And normally when we hear stories like this, it's normally the father talking about his rights and how he was denied by the courts the rights of his children. But today we have attorney Anishka Missick. And last thing I'll say before I let her come on, and then she can just take the show when Jackie come on. Jackie will ask you some questions, or when she's finished, we'll open it up for the audience to ask their questions. Dr. Mark, I had this experience. I'll share this. I was in Baintown walking about, and this gentleman was preaching, and it started to rain. So the gentleman stopped preaching, and he started praying. So I really thought I was foolish. I was maybe about 18, 17, 18. to hear this person preaching, praying for the rain not to come. And I can't even remember those young boys if we laughed at that. I believe you might even laugh. But nevertheless, the rain stopped and they continued with the street meeting. And that gentleman, I learned, was our preacher, basically call him preacher man role. And today, this young lady I learned is actually his daughter. So it's just amazing. But Mistress Missick, I just want to welcome you on the program Transforming Lives today. You can share your story, and when you decide to stop, we will open it up. If my co-host Jackie comes on, she will take the lead with the questions. If she's not here, then I will just allow the audience, if there are any questions they want to ask you. Welcome, Mrs. Missick, and go ahead.
Thank you. Could you hear me?
Oh, yes, loud and clear.
Awesome.
Very good.
Yes, I have, and thank you so much, Brother Williams, for this opportunity. I truly appreciate this. And I pray that, obviously you've already set the tone with Brother Mark, with regard to setting order, the right order, which is Jesus Christ. And I want to start off with my story. I've shared it. And then I will go into the law. I am, as you indicated, I'm an attorney of 17 years. I've been working with the Office of the Attorney General now since October 2011. And I was married to my former husband, who is also an attorney at law. We've been divorced, we've been separated from 2012, and then the final divorce decree came through in 2014. During the time of our divorce, the court at the time, the Supreme Court, made an order with regard to the custody and welfare of our children. I had at the time 2 children. I now have a 3rd child with my current husband. And the order was that we had joint custody. However, primary care and control, which means the day-to-day care of the children, will be with me, and then he will be given reasonable access. Okay? And this was in place with regard to the court's order from 2014.
Okay.
Now, before that time, when my ex-husband deserted the family in 2012, I was always the parent who continued to care predominantly for the children.
Right.
Always did. As a matter of fact, especially with the first child, I was a stay-at-home mom with my first baby, who came into this world being only 2 pounds, 7 ounces. She came prematurely. And I shared before that both she and we almost lost our lives, because I had what was known at the time a concealed abruption, where my placenta was detaching itself from the baby, and I was losing a lot of blood. But there was no indication that I was losing that much blood. But thankfully, I was on the high-risk ward at the time at PMH. And because they did usual checks, blood checks, they were able to determine that, wait, something's not right. You're losing a lot of blood. And they thought at first it was a mistake. And when they checked it again, it was no mistake.
Okay.
I was losing blood. And it was a concealed abruption. Concealed meaning there was no indication from my eyes, no indication from my body. There was no blood coming from my body. Nothing, no indication physically that I was actually losing this amount of blood. But thanks be to God, the same God that my father, that you spoke about, who stopped the rain when my father prayed. I was at that time, even though I was on the high-risk ward, I was also in a fast, because my church was dealing with, had a corporate fast at that time. And I participated in my own way in that same fast. So God, the God I know, the God of my parents, the God that my parents taught me about, the God that I have come to know and trust for my own self, delivered me and my baby girl out of that situation. But for the fact that she came early, there was nothing else wrong with her. Nothing else. So I thank God for that. So that same daughter and my son, who came only 4 years later, and I've kept them and nurtured them predominantly, both of them. And we do know in our society, the men are typically socialized to go out there and to work.
Right.
And even though women nowadays are doing the same thing within our society, going out there and work, the woman is still predominantly the person who nurtures children.
Right. That's correct.
That hasn't changed.
Right.
Most women, even if, for example, you have many men are becoming much more involved in the lives of caring for children, but the predominant care and nurture of most children remains with mothers. And then where, for example, a father, for some reason, you do have exceptions to the rule, mind you. Trust you me. There are some very good fathers out there. So it's not to say that fathers are not good fathers or men are not good fathers, but the predominant nurturing of children comes from the woman. And whenever you see situations such as this arise, as I will go on to explain, where my children were taken out unlawfully, or where the father wishes to take custody from the mother because he has an issue with the mother, not because he truly cares about the child being in any real danger, but he somehow feels, you know what, I'm going to strip this mother, I'm going to abuse this mother or harass this mother, and the way I'm going to do it, if I leave, I know that I will always be able to maintain control if it is that I can take these children. Because a lot of times our children for women becomes our motivation to continue.
Yes.
To live life and to continue. So most men are hip to the fact that to get to the woman, let's go to those children. Just like Satan did in the garden. In order to get to the man, he went to the woman. And now Satan has employed a new object and scheme, and that is, in order to get to the children, let's remove the woman, or in order to get to the woman, let's remove the children. You see? So my children, everything was going according to order, the order even of the court, and the order before the court was even made, that I conducted and carried out the care and nurture of my two children. And then in 2019, all of a sudden, that changed in July of 2019.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to me at the time, my ex-husband, he decided that the way in which we did things previously, including the way in which the Supreme Court did things in order to be done, that was no longer needed, because he now had some very powerful friends in positions of authority. Some powerful friends who was able to now do certain things that he always wanted to be done, and that was to strip me.
Right.
Okay. And in that moment, he was able to obtain from the court an ex parte order without notice to me, where he was given immediate full custody to the exclusion of me to those children. There was nothing, there was no police report, there was no social services inquiry report, there was no complaint of abuse, nothing like that. But the court used what is used in law only for emergency circumstances.
Yes.
And the only time you use that particular aspect of the law, when you take children in that fashion, it has to be urgent circumstances. And usually those urgent circumstances would mean that the child or the children concerned have been or are in some harm or danger. Immediate urgent harm or danger. That is the only way or manner in which you take children away in that manner. Otherwise, you go to the proper means.
Yes.
If it is that I was the person who lawfully had care and control of the children, if my ex-husband felt for some reason he wanted to regain, or not regain, he wanted control, then the proper way was to go through the court system. But he would have had to have, according to law, in consideration of the Child Protection Act, he ought to have had legitimate reasons in order to have the court vary that particular order. Because
Okay.
even the court does not have the right to just do what they want to do.
Uh-huh.
The court only has the powers to do what they do based on the law.
You're right.
No one in our country, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter which tier you are, no one in this country can do whatever they want to do. Only whatever the law allows.
Right.
So when they did that to me, without a hearing, without even notice of a hearing, and at that time when this was happening to me, when the court was making its order, I was in another court on behalf of the government, marshaling the evidence in the coroner's court for the government. That was during the time I was a prosecutor. And I'm there standing in a coroner's court, marshaling the evidence. And at the same time, unbeknownst to me, there's a hearing going on in my absence without any notice to me that my children, a judge is ordering my children to be removed from my care.
Yes.
And then what happens is I was supposed to get the children pursuant to the order that was in place, the original order. I was supposed to have the children for the summer month of August.
Right.
And even though the decision was made from the 29th of July, that Monday, unbeknownst to me, when on the eve of the time that I was supposed to get the children on the 1st of August, I received the order by way of a police officer serving it on me. And upon reading that order, that was the first time I became aware that I no longer had custody of my children, nor access or anything to my children. It wasn't as if the court varied the order, and in varying the order, he gave, extra rights to the father of access, and certainly none of this could have been done without my appearance, me being in the court in the first place. That's the first thing, because these were not circumstances that warranted an ex parte proceedings without notice.
Okay.
So, and then the funny thing about it is this particular judge as well, according to law, was a judge who was in the commercial division of the court. So what you have in our court system is that judges are placed in different divisions. So you have a family division, you have criminal law division, you have the public law and international division. You understand my point?
Yes. I see what you're saying.
And this judge was in the commercial division, so he did not even have the jurisdiction to hear that type of matter.
Right.
So he was wrong on two fronts. The first being he did not have the jurisdiction to hear the matter because he was in the incorrect division of the court according to law.
Right.
And then the second part of him not having jurisdiction according to law was that pursuant to Order 29 of the Supreme Court rules, the only way you can have an urgent injunction of that nature done against the mother is where, for example, in the circumstances where I already had primary care and control, is where there were urgent circumstances. There was none in this instance. So in all fronts, he was incorrect in law.
Okay.
However, for 6 months and counting, I was going to lose custody because he kept adjourning the matter in monthly intervals. Every time I appeared before the court, they kept adjourning. He kept adjourning the matter. It was like a mind game, a mental game. I would come to court. Of course, at this time, I'm not even seeing my children. The first time I appeared in court, the judge accused me of behavior. I asked him what behavior he would not tolerate. He accused me of behavior that he would not tolerate in the court. I asked what behavior was that? And he had an issue that I was asking him what behavior that was. And I have a right to do that. And this is where our Bahamians have to become more knowledgeable of the laws and their rights. Because what happened is just like the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, and the same thing is happening in our country. Bahamians and citizens and residents alike are suffering in our country because they do not know their rights.
Yes.
And even as a lawyer who is a lawyer for the government, you're placing yourself in a very bad position when it is you do not know the law or do not know your rights.
Oh,
Okay.
right.
So what ended up happening is, despite that, yes, I knew my rights, but what they did with me was he wanted to make me understand in some way, shape, or form that he was the judge and my rights did not matter.
Ah,
So
yes.
what he did was, when I questioned him regarding what was the behavior he was saying I was doing, because I knew there was no behavior, I knew I wasn't doing anything in the court. What he then did is I in essence sicked his aide on me, who roughed me up and grabbed me out of that courtroom. So it made it appear like there was this big melee going on in the courtroom. Like, oh, this was some big situation going on. And at the point when they had me arrested and detained at Central, the judge now collects himself, returns to his court, and extends the order, the ex parte order, giving a further custody extension to October. Okay. And that went on, like I said, for almost 6 months until I was able to now pay the fees and all that different stuff before the Court of Appeal. And then I got a hearing before them on the 15th of January of 2020. And immediately the children were returned to me and the order was restored.
Okay.
Now, what did not happen at the time, even though I was thankful for the fact that justice was restored in an expedited fashion, what ought to have happened was that the judgment should have actually outlined, there should have been a proper judgment where the judges in the Court of Appeal should have actually stated the wrong and egregious nature of what had happened. And that did not happen. And perhaps that might be the reason why this has happened to me a second time.
Okay.
Perhaps. But we came out of the court January 15th. And by January 21st, unbeknownst to me, my ex-husband had filed a new order before a new judge.
Wow.
And by February 10th, I was now before this new judge. And even though I asked for this particular judge to recuse herself, recusing means because, there's a potential of bias that, I don't feel that you would be able to, I'm saying to the judge, I don't feel for one reason or the other you would adjudicate over my matter properly because of whatever reason, and you would usually give a reason. Could you please hand the matter on to somebody else so that justice not only is done, but is seen to be done, because you don't want something to happen and then I could say, well, this is the reason why I was telling you not to do this, because I knew that you were going to do this. So to avoid any type of trouble or the appearance of bias, the wisdom in judges saying, you know what, let me just pass the matter on to somebody else. But of course, when I asked for this particular judge to recuse herself, the main basis for me asking for her to recuse herself was because I had prosecuted someone who was no doubt very near and dear to her.
Right.
And during the time of me prosecuting the person, she was very vocal in the courtroom, and very malicious against me in terms of my conduct of the proceedings, not of the proceedings, of how I marshaled the evidence on behalf of the Crown. And she would openly criticize me. And when I asked that she recuse herself to the attorney who at the time represented me, she retorted that she did not have any issues with me. Her only issue was that my grammar was so poor. And as a former English teacher, she was offended by the way that I spoke. So therefore, that was her only issue. Now, if that don't tell you that she's already prejudiced against me, because first of all, that's not even a basis for a judge to be making any type of criticisms against somebody. So you're so high-minded in our country that you feel that my speech warrants you speaking down to me.
That's correct.
And if you had a problem with my speech, and so much so that you couldn't hear what I was saying during the prosecution of the matter, then clearly you are not the person who should adjudicate over my matter, because at the end of the day, you have to hear now that same speech. So if it annoyed you then, it's very likely it will annoy you now.
That sounds like a bias.
Nevertheless, she continued to hold on to that matter. And do you know, she held on to my matter from February 10th until she came off the bench, and I have not gotten any judgment from her as to why she took my children away. Not one judgment to give any reason, not any fair hearing before that court, not one due process nor natural justice was employed in that courtroom in the least. And to date, I still do not know what legal basis, because see, a lot of people would say, man, there has to be a reason. There has to be a reason why a judge would do that. And one of the things I try to let people know is, yes, there has to be a reason, but in law, it's called a legal reason. There has to be a legal reason. So let me give you an illustration. If you're in a classroom and the courtroom, the teacher gives you homework to do. You could do the homework. You could choose not to do the homework. So you come to school, the class the next morning, and the teacher asks you, let me tell you, Johnny, where's your homework? And you tell that teacher, I didn't do my homework. Why didn't you do that homework? I didn't do my homework because I didn't feel like doing my homework. Do you think the teacher would consider that a justified reason?
No, I don't think so.
No. Now, my thing is, just like that, in law, because judges wield so much authority in terms of what they do, the law requires them to ensure that they are following the laws that have been in place and enacted for years.
Right.
You understand? And not just to employ the laws that are being enacted for years, but to ensure that you are making sure that you're hearing all sides before a decision is made.
Right, that's correct.
You want to hear all sides. Imagine if King Solomon in that day had only taken the side of the mother who already claimed that she was the mother of that baby.
Right.
What if he had just taken one side? What if they had only had an ex parte proceedings with that one mother and not have the other mother to make a wise determination on, wait, now something ain't right here. Let me see what wisdom I can employ in this circumstance so the justice is done.
Yes.
So that never happened in my situation. And then they continued with the orders. And what has happened to date is I'm left now 2 years later, this second time around, having seen my children. No rights to my children. No rights to my children. My older children, that is.
Right.
And the video that is circulating, I've given out to every court, where every court is saying that, where my children were taken out of my home in the middle of the night. That was around 8:30 p.m. We were peacefully at home. Me and my young 3 children. When they knocked at my door and commanded that my children, because of this court's order, was to be handed over outright. They came to collect those children. And they dragged my children out of that home. The father, that is.
Right.
He had no right to be in my home. The courts could not give him any rights to be in my home.
Right.
And he came into my home and took my children, hollering and screaming. There was no social services personnel there to try to bring some wisdom. They are the agency concerned with dealing with children. So even though I'm not saying that social services is a void of I'm not saying that social services is void of complaints and void of doing acts that might seem or appear to be corrupt acts. But I'm saying that even the appearance of it, there should have been a social service worker
Yes.
present. But like I go back to say hastily, the social service worker do not have more rights than me as a mother. I am the greatest guardian of my children.
Right.
As their mother, until such time as before a fair and transparent court I've been deemed unfit, which I'm not. I'm not unfit, not in the least. And what is so sad about this is if I'm the picture of being unfit, then there are many other mothers in the Bahamas who need to give up their children according to law.
Right.
If I am what unfit is, if I am the model or the poster child for what is unfit, then what that means is many mothers today who have a human right to care for their children,
Yes.
that can be taken away just by an individual appearing before a court without any, there don't have to be any reasons, any legal reasons to do so, and just ask a court for your child. And the court can grant to them rights to your child. That's a scary notion. And now what I was again fighting is after that judge left the bench and did not deal with my matter and was just holding on to my matter. I mean, holding on to my matter. Listen, just abusing me in the court. They were mocking me in the court, the lawyers at the time who were representing my husband, my ex-husband, just abusing me. Oh, she crazy. I'm the judge, and just abusing me in the courts. And of course, the court is there, in a slick way, mocking me too. Mocking me, because at the end of the day, I'm not unfit, and I'm not mentally unfit, and I'm not mentally unstable.
Right, that's correct.
I'm not. And when they tried to play that game, thankfully I went to one of the more reputable doctors at the time, psychiatrists, forensic psychiatrists in the system, and privately, who said that I don't meet the criteria for mental illness.
Right.
At best, all that can be said is that I felt that the decision was grossly wrong. That was my reaction. At best, that's what you can say. But no, this woman does not have any mental, she doesn't have any mental illness. She has nothing wrong with her. And besides, at no time while my children were in my care, was there anything done to them that suggested that I had any mental illness around my kids.
Right.
There was no harm or anything of that nature done to my children. So now, since she's come off the bench, what the judge has now done, and I now have evidence to that effect, since I've brought my constitutional motion, which is against the government now, and I'll go on to that. But what the judge did, the other judge who was on my case, who already was on my case for all these years, for over a year now, and not doing anything, is she put my matter, my file over to another judge who was conflicted in my case, one of her friends. I can't get a break.
Yes, yes, yes.
And we know, Brother Dave, we live in a very small jurisdiction.
Right.
So we know who is friends. We know who are connected. You understand what I'm trying to say?
That's correct.
Let's not. We live in a small country, just like how you eventually found out who my father was, Reverend Arthur Preacher Road. I'm quite sure we live in a small society, and we know who a buddy is. We know the friends. We know the connections.
Right.
If we search, and it doesn't take us long to do that. But in this instance, this young lady was someone who I ran against for vice president of the Bar Association. She was also on the same team with the daughter of the person who took my children.
Right.
He
Wow.
was also the vice president of the president, who is currently the president of the Bar Association, who is also the attorneys for my ex-husband. And what she did is she held on to my matter, even though it was supposed to be going before the urgent judge at that time. And then when she finally had the hearing in April, and I said to her beforehand in my letter that I would like for her to recuse her my file herself from my matter. As a matter of fact, the person who's in charge of the files in the family division, from his mouth to my ear, said that he had a conversation with the judge and expressed to the judge the views and the issues that I had, and that he was going to go and make representation to the Chief Justice. But that this judge said to him, well, since she feels that strongly, I will hand the matter over to Justice Donna Newton, who was supposed to hear my matter, who was the family law judge, the main family law judge.
Right.
And she still did not give up the matter. So when she had the matter, when I appeared before her that April, she adjourned my matter from April, knowing that I'm asking for her to recuse herself. And if she's going to keep on the matter, then of course I would like an earlier date to make the application so I can make a request formally and before the court for her to recuse herself.
Right.
And you know when she adjourned my matter for? October 31st. October 31st, but then my ex-husband and his attorneys filed their new urgent summons to switch my daughter from one school to the next. Now she figured that that's urgent. To just switch my daughter from one school to the next, even though he has full custody, so he can do that all by himself. But she heard that action on an urgent basis before hearing my matter that she considered was not urgent, even though I had not seen my children for 2 years. Going on to 2 years at that time. And heard their matter, and then she granted him his desire to move the child from one school to the next. And I know why in law they're doing that. They're doing that because when I went before the Court of Appeal, so that the Court of Appeal could see what they were doing below, what the Court of Appeal said, first they directed in an email that the judge must make an order. And after the judge made her second order on my case, extending and continuing the order against me, then they brought me before them and said that she made a new order. So because I was appealing the old order, I couldn't, they only could appeal. Was appealing the first order. So because I couldn't appeal the second order that she made, even though they directed her to make it, that is nothing that they could do. Bearing in mind, the Court of Appeal has the same powers as the Supreme Court. So what she did not do, the Court of Appeal could have done it. But I want to show you the law. Because it's very clear at this point that I'm being toyed with by the legal system. And not only am I being toyed with by the legal system, but unfortunately, I'm being toyed with by my own employers within the Office of the Attorney General, the directors there. Because they know very well that this is wrong. I was in charge of the Office of the Attorney General for about 8 months while my supervisor went on leave to Malta to do a master's. And here it is. While I was running the Office of the Attorney General, I dealt with all manner of matters. Not only have I dealt with it as a legal officer, period, but I've dealt with it even more so being in charge of the office that I ran at the time in Grand Bahama. So I'm aware of what should happen. I'm aware of the powers that the Attorney General has.
Yes.
And in a matter like this, you would have seen what they did with other people recently when the government changed, how they did not even take them when they filed their lawsuits and situations, what they did. They just quickly settled the matters out of court. So who would know best what the Attorney General's office can do, what their powers are?
Yes.
Being the principal advisors to the government than me, who've been working in the Office of the Attorney General from 2011.
That's correct.
So what happened is I took out a constitutional motion because at that point now, what I'm saying is, you know what? I have enough evidence because I know they was playing with me from the beginning. I could see a game from the beginning. I'm well aware of what the game looks like because at the end of the day, I'm an attorney.
That's
And
correct.
I'm an attorney for the government. You're not dealing with somebody who is not aware of what the rules are. I'm aware of what the rules are, so I would surely be aware of when the rules are not being played. So here it is now. I took out my constitutional motion because at this point, there is enough evidence, great evidence, overwhelming evidence that says the state is wrong. They're errant in what they did, that the judges in doing what they did acted unconstitutionally. Because I tried to raise it on appeal and the Court of Appeal just ignored it. They just kept dismissing my action. They would not even acknowledge my constitutional complaint. And that in itself is very wrong. And it's wrong, and I will go to that very momentarily as to why it's wrong. Okay, and I'm going to show you in law why it's wrong. Okay, but here now, what I now did is brought an action against the state. And whenever you bring an action against the state, it has to be in the name of the Attorney General.
Okay.
Some people put a specific name, or some people would just put the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas or the Attorney General. You have to do that. Okay?
Yes.
So I did it. And what the Attorney General office or the Attorney General ought to have done in the circumstances is have one of their legal officers carefully review my complaints and then investigate whether or not what I was saying was true. That's what you do.
Yes.
That's what we do. So if you're, for example, if when you bring a complaint or a civil suit within the office of the Attorney General or a constitutional complaint against the state, what the office of the Attorney General should do now, a lawyer in there, is to look at the evidence and to investigate it. Now, when you're dealing with a civil suit, you're only dealing with pleadings, okay? Pleadings where the person is only making allegations. In a constitutional motion, however, where I have actually filed affidavits, that's evidence. You catch what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
I have actually filed evidence against the state pursuant to Order 41 of the Supreme Court rules. And the Crown, I can't speak to whether they investigated it or not. I know they didn't even have to investigate it because at the end of the day, I provided all the evidence to support it. The orders are right there. The law is very trite regarding what they should have done. Very trite. This is not a deep point, I'm telling you. The law is absolutely clear. So unless any of those judges were coming and giving some evidence to say that, no, we took our children because this and that, if they don't have a defense, then why am I still fighting before these courts?
Why? You know, this sound like a Tyler Perry movie, you know. And I know we're talking real stuff, but that's just how it sounds.
Yeah. So here now, Brother Dave, I have submitted my documents to my evidence, all of my evidence, to the AG's office.
Right.
And what they did is they hire an outside attorney because the information I received was that none of my colleagues would dare come in that court to challenge
Let me stop
my
you for a minute. We got somebody on the line. Let's see if we can patch them in. Hello? Hello? I can hear you. I don't know. Can you all hear him on Zoom? Can you hear this person on Zoom?
No, we can't.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. We're not able to get that technical side of it. Maybe you can just WhatsApp 4336917. I'll share the information. Or come on Zoom.
To us.
Well,
So very quickly, because I see people beginning to ask questions. As a matter of fact, because I didn't realize I was going this long.
That's okay.
It's
Just hold on 1 minute. One
Yeah.
minute. Go ahead. Let's try to get the caller. Go ahead, caller.
I can't hear.
We
Okay.
can't. Maybe what I suggest.
Mr. Williams,
I can
and
now.
to the brave mother, the courageous, brave mother, who obviously have had to endure just too much by a system that is put in place to protect the middle class and the marginal. I am mystified that something as fundamental in law, even as a layman, you know, that the court could play footsie with the life, with the life of our young innocent children, just to be friends and play partisan politics, while a mother suffer, and obviously the kids suffer, and by extension the country will suffer. But what is most telling and notably telling is the fact that there has been no case proved against her in terms of her being unfit. That is clear.
That's right.
Because if she was unfit, then they would have taken all the kids. Clearly, they haven't done any due diligence, and they deliberately are dragging their feet to punish her for whatever reason. I don't know if she won the lottery. I don't know what it is. I don't know where the malice. I don't know. But this in the Bahamas in 2022 is a travesty. And I'm wondering where's the church? Because I know some of them are aware of this. But this is the core corruption in a so-called Christian nation that goes on a daily basis, okay? And why so many people are depressed and hang their head down because they don't know where to go. When you can't get justice at the court, where can you go?
We're in a sad state.
Where can you go? And so I'm saying to the mother today that we, us, a few men of our ladies on the community who still have little balls and prepare to die for cause as such, need to bombard that appeal court and court of appeal, and we need to take this matter on head on, because I can tell you, these people sit around the table and on their phones and hide around the cloth, and they are making a mess out of a system that is designed to protect us.
Exactly.
And it's a shame. And so I just want to encourage Anishka, because I feel her pain. I really feel her pain. I'm a father of 5 living kids. And I will never, unless I'll never take one of those children from their mothers. Never. Okay, but you know, life is a cycle. It's a good thing there's a live God that looks high, that sits high and look low. Okay? And I believe in this matter, this matter is going to be brought to speedy resolution in short order.
In the name of
Okay,
Jesus.
That suffering for the last 2 years is going to be pain of the past. And I thank you, Mr. Williams.
Yes, I just want to say, because I want to give some,
because I wish the media would do their job in this country.
right. I want to give some others a chance to ask some other questions.
Playing and holding brief for the friends and politics, and Mr. Ryan Pinder, and particularly get across the ask, excuse my expression, and address this matter.
I appreciate this caller. I really do, Mr.
Yes.
Porter Williams, because this is some real pain here, and people don't know how bad this pain is. They don't. I am right now facing contempt charges and all, and I think that needs to be said, because the court will not listen. The court will not do anything about it. And when I bring it to the public's attention, they now want to try to victimize me through their means of contempt proceedings. When in the Bahamas could something be contempt to talk your own business? and to talk about how it affects you. When in law could that be considered contempt of court? So the court wants swift justice to protect them, but they don't care about my rights and those of my children.
Okay, Anishka, so I know some folks might want to ask some questions now. I do know we normally sign up 5, but I even if we sign up with the radio 5, 8 persons on Zoom. Let me get some tips. Jackie and I have been doing this show. This is the most comments I see them, and I must honestly say that. So I don't know if you want to maybe take about 2 or 3 minutes. I may sign, and then I sign off. Right now, I can see folks as we look at the comment column, bunch of comments. People want to ask some questions.
Brother Dave, I wish we could do this a second time, like how I'm going to be in Nassau on next week. I don't know what your schedule is like. And of course, I don't want to push in the front of anybody. I wish we could have done a part 2 because there is so much more. At that point, like I said, myself, I would be appearing before the courts for contempt charges on Friday the 4th. And then the hearing is on the 7th, before the Court of Appeal is on the 7th. And both are public hearings where I would want people to be out or people to watch the Zoom link. I don't know if they're going to send the Zoom link on the contempt one, but I'm coming over in Nassau for that. And I wish we could have done a part 2 on the Sunday if possible, so that we could ventilate this a lot more.
Anishka, no problem. I have somebody, but what we can do is let them run their program for half an hour, and we'll do the other half an hour with you. That's on radio live, and then you know on Zoom, we always open for as long as necessary because it's Zoom. So what I want to do, let me just sign off on the radio because I know it's 5 o'clock and there are some other people coming in here. And then those
I really want to thank that caller too, Brother Williams, because I don't know who it was, but I thank God for real men who's standing up with me and my husband during this time, who could see that, yeah, man needs rights to their children too and access, but come on, 2 wrongs don't make a right. How could a man feel comfortable seeing my children stripped away like that? I mean, come on, that is nothing manly or godly about that. No way. It's quite demonic. So I thank God for that caller for standing and speaking that up as well. Thank you so much for that encouragement.
Okay, what I will do, I will sign off of the radio. Those of you on Facebook and YouTube, because that's quite a number of persons, and they'll post their questions. And then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, understand? Ladies and gentlemen, you can listen to the program Transforming Lives on Global 99.5. Those of you who are on Cable TV 974 or Global 99.5, you can go to Facebook or Zoom. Look at Uplifting Men, Transforming Lives, and you can join the conversation. Or if you want to join the Zoom link, you can get on your phone.
I posted the Zoom link on my Facebook page as well, Anishka Missick.
Okay, right. I'm going to tell persons just listening by radio. If somebody just looks up and see up, I sympathize with them. When housing people, when they say many men are probably the same thing happened to them, and they're not lawyers. I say people the issue that's on WhatsApp. But I want to go on give the WhatsApp before I sign off. Folks, if you want to join us, just ask the questions. The meeting ID 854 3992 9336. I'll repeat 854 3992 9336. Passcode 511405.
What someone thankfully did just now, Brother Williams, is I see that they tagged me where they are on the Zoom and they put it as a live thing on my Facebook page too. So I'm sharing that. So people should be able to see it that way as well.
Okay, good. And my number is 4326917. If you WhatsApp it, I'll share the link with you. Just click it and come on. 4336917. I'll repeat it again. 4336917. WhatsApp me, and I will send you the link and you can join us. You've been listening to the program Transforming Lives on Global 99.5. Such a wonderful topic, a powerful story. We continue to be quite a number of persons on Facebook, on the YouTube channel, as well as on Zoom. And we're going to open up any class. Jackie will take the lead, the questions, the comments. Dave Williams, on behalf of Jackie Gardner, my guest, Mr. Missick, a lawyer, fighting for the rights of the children. Global 99.5, Cable TV 974. We end the show the way we always end, reminding you that there's nothing more important than having a relationship with Jesus Christ. Not a church, not a denomination, but your own personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Transforming lives, Global 99.5. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Okay, you can continue, Anishka. No problem. Jackie will take the lead with the question or comments. Jackie?
So, well, thank you. Such a powerful sharing of information, and knowledge is power. So, I want to start off by asking the question: do you presently have any visitation rights with your children? That's my personal question.
No, I
And
don't.
then
What she did was when she first did the order, when she first had took my children when they were taken out of the home, I had no visitation rights. She just took them outright. But I guess once she saw that the appeals court was in action now, because I think in some respect they may have thought that I was ignorant. While I was in Nassau, they changed it saying that I could see the children by supervised access every Tuesday and Saturday, which they denied me because social services also said that they're closed during those hours. Okay, that they could not assist me with supervised access. So even if the court is going to do supervised access, which again, I want to hasten to say, she had no right to do in law. Okay, but even if she's going to give me supervised access, she should be careful if I fit that particular circumstance and category to ensure that I can truly see my children by supervised access. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then since coming to Grand Bahama, what her order was is I can speak to my children at 11 o'clock every Sunday by Zoom. Now, my point to you, I'm not in a prison. So not only am I not in a prison, I'm not in an asylum, and I am not unfit in no way, shape, or form. So how could a court prevent me from seeing my children? And this is not, I want to correct the view. This is worse than talking about visitation. We don't talk about visitation. We talk about access. It's reasonable access. Okay? That's the proper terminology. Reasonable access. Okay? Because one parent has to be granted what you call primary care and control, and the other parent is granted reasonable access. You following me? And when you're talking about reasonable access, because one parent has to do the day-to-day care of the child, and then the other person obviously has the reasonable access. And you only take away the access where the court has evidence and has proven and established through due process and natural justice that the parent should no longer have access to the children for one reason or the other.
Understood.
And I also want to share with you, pursuant to Section 5 of the Child Protection Act, if people can go there and read it, you only have to Google it. Whenever you're putting an act, you say Child Protection Act Bahamas. So it will come up with the Bahamas, Bahamian jurisdiction. My children also have an entitlement of access to me as their mother. So it's not only that I have a right of access to my children. You understand?
Yeah,
that could not be taken away willy-nilly because the court had already, apart from the human right standpoint that I have to my children, the point is through the divorce proceedings, I'd already gotten the primary care and control. A court having heard all sides, already concluded, and it was the Chief Justice at the time who adjudicated over my divorce proceedings. And the Chief Justice at the time who adjudicated over my divorce proceedings is the now President of the Court of Appeals, Sir Michael Barnett. And Sir Michael Barnett was also there when the evidence came forward that my vehicle was burnt up during the time that I was asking my ex-husband for the authorization to change the car from comprehensive insurance into third party. So it's not as if the court is not aware of all of the nuances, even from the divorce proceedings.
Wow.
But the thing about it is, in the circumstances where I already was deemed the parent with primary care and control, the only way that could be switched now is where the applicant, who would have been my ex-husband, is asking for the court to vary terms of the order. Vary terms to the order. Not remove custody. The only way you can remove custody and access from a parent is if they're unfit. That's the only way. Unfit.
Right. You stated.
You can vary orders to adjust to new circumstances, but the only way you can take away access, which I had an entitlement to. In law, I have an entitlement to that. In my human rights, I have an entitlement to that. My children came from my womb. And the only way a court can interfere with that is by me seeming to be a danger. There is evidence and established proof through due process of the law that I am not able to keep them. I'm a harm and a danger to my children, which I'm not, because the court feels I'm a harm and a danger to those two children and didn't see I was a harm and a danger to the last one I have, who was in the home the same time. Why the police them didn't take hold? And the police have a duty of care. If they see a robbery happening to you or something happening to you against the law, shouldn't they do what they supposed to be doing?
Correct. Point taken. You've laid that out. Well said. Let's go to the chat and let's see. Thanks for that response. Let's see if we can get some of the questions in.
Jackie, I saw Lionel Molly had his hand raised. I don't know if you still want to talk. You hear me, Jackie?
Lionel Molly, I see has his hand raised as well.
Okay, let's take that one then, as opposed to Mr. Morley. Mr. Williams, can you unmute Mr. Morley's mic and give him an opportunity?
His mic is not activated.
Mr. Morley, you would have to your mic is not activated. So either you might want to type your question in the chat if that's more convenient for you. All right, let's go back to the chat in the interest of time. Okay, so here's the question. So if that part of the law is only used in extreme circumstances, how come the ruling was allowed to remain in place? That's part one. And it seems—
What is the question, the first part?
So I'm thinking that the particular law that you referenced, it says, so if that part of the law, so I'm assuming they made this comment as you were speaking. So if that part of the law is only used in extreme circumstances, so I remember you were saying in terms of denying access, children being removed from the home, it's only in cases where, I guess, extreme, whether extreme cases where, you know, it's some endangerment to the child. You remember when you were making that comment? That's what they were referring to. So it says, if that part of the law is only used in extreme circumstances, how come the ruling was allowed to remain in place? That's part one. And it seems to have been an abuse of jurisdictional power. And last, and I know just in the interest of time, was this matter brought before your legal association? So 3-part, same person.
Okay, well, I can answer the first 2 questions because it's 3 parts, but the first 2 questions are pretty much what I would say is axiomatic, in that you could see it by hearing it. And she pretty much answered, or the person answered their own question, because it's not law what they did. That's what I'm reiterating. You understand? It should not, the fact that it's in place is what I'm also asking the court why it's still in place too. Because it ought not be in place. That's what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying to you, Ms. Gardner?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The point is the person is asking me, okay, if that's not the law, then why is it happening? And I say to you, you tell me, Why is it happening?
That's the same. It's the reason why you're giving exposure to it all. It should not have happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate your comment. All
Yes.
right.
There was a third part though. They wanted to ask.
Right there. It says, was this matter brought before your legal association? Yes, association.
The Bar Association, listen to what I say with the Bar Association. The president of the Bar Association and his brother, Miles Parker, and the vice president, wait, let me put it to you like this. The president of the Bar Association, Khalil Parker and Miles Parker are the attorneys for my ex-husband who did this. That's the first thing. Wow. And the judge who they have it before now, who it was passed on to and is holding on to the matter, is the person who was his vice president of the Bar Association who I ran against. So let's figure what type of justice I would get there.
Wow. Okay. Someone says
Jackie,
yes?
If I may, I'm sorry to butt in, but if I may, this really sounds far out there. And Ms. Missick, thank you very much for bringing it to the attention of the public. If I may, and you can answer if you don't know it or not. What, because somehow I still feel is a missing piece. What was the egregious effort done between both of you to cause such a massive dislike to have this matter like this? I mean, you have persons who, oh, I don't like you, you don't like me, or you sneak out on me, I sneak out on you, or you took my money and I could do this to you. What was it? Because I want to kind of bring a perspective to the situation. Let me put this to you,
Ms. Forbes. Ms. Forbes.
Yeah.
Why it is that a person could be minding their own business. We had children who were killed and murdered this year by idiots who were holding guns in their possession. And they did what they did, and innocent children were killed.
Yes.
You have persons right now over the globe where women are being raped by men who they were minding their own business, don't know them from Adam, the man in the moon, and they're being violated this very moment. While you sit in the comfort of Zoom, and I do as well, there are people right now being pillaged by individuals. And there's no reason for why it happened. It may be a reason why the person who did it to them has done it. And that's why we have a court hearing, or we would like to sit down. I'd like to sit down and ask the same thing. But what I do know is this one fact: to take my children, you can hate me, but that don't mean that you have to take my car, or take my children. You catch what I'm saying to you, Ms. Forbes?
Yeah, I hear you, but I'm
saying that to you to say that I did not do anything. This is about my children. Now, whatever my ex-husband, because I was a good wife, I married him a virgin. And this is not about me and him. This is about me being a mother to my children and the courts taking away access. Now, I have given them an opportunity through my constitutional motion to answer that question, and they failed to do that. So you could come on the live Zooms when I send out the live Zooms, and you could watch for yourself. There is no evidence, and there is no reason. There's no missing puzzle. The missing puzzle is their head ain't no good. Because at the end of the day, they're not following the law, period. And they don't owe me nothing, and I don't owe them anything. But what they do owe the public is that when they sit in public office, they do what it is they're supposed to be doing according to law.
So in this regard, though, not to further, Jackie, I'm going to come out now. So if you've gone to the higher courts, the Bar Association can't help you. You're telling me there's no other jurisdiction within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that can hear this matter with independent third parties to listen and hear it and render a judgment.
That is the reason why, Ms. Forbes, and you're asking very good questions. Trust you me, and I want you to ask me some hard questions. So I could come across sometimes look passionate, but listen, I love your questions. I do. But let me put it to you like this.
I'm deeply confounded. That's why.
Yeah, and you should be. You should be. Because I am troubled too. I'm troubled by all of it because I'm affected by all of it. But guess what? There are other women and other people out there who are affected by unlawful judges too, and unlawful orders. I'm not the only one.
You're the only one who's coming out of this publicly.
To speak up about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're correct.
But I will say this to you in answer to your question. At the end of the day, the courts themselves, and if you go on, I wish I knew how to function this thing where I could upload, where you could put the code of ethics. Judges themselves, the court is supposed to be just. They're supposed to be independent. These things that I'm talking about should not be even, that's why I tell you when the saying, and I read the case recently, justice must not only be done, but it got to be seen to be done. You know, when the Bible talks about, is there something about the Bible where the Bible talks about, I know there's a scripture where it talks about don't let your good be evil spoken of, but there is something about corrupt company. You don't even want to be associated. It's something about this, the scriptures that speak to it. The point I'm making is this. The court should be careful. Should be, my husband just said it, shun the very appearance of evil. You got to shun it because why? At the end of the day, if you sticking with the crowd and the crowd you with, and remember those old sayings, be careful with the company you keep.
Yes.
Birds of a feather flock together. So at the end of the day, the court should be so integrity filled that even when you come with a constitutional motion, do you know the Constitution is the most important law on our books? And let me tell you why the Constitution is the most important law on the books. Because the Constitution not only births our nation, it not only births judges, it not only births everything that you see around you that makes up the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, but it tells you pursuant to Article 2 that it's the supreme law. And every other law that is not consistent with it is actually void. That tells you how much power the Constitution has. So if a person comes, and guess what? The Constitution also has in it our human rights. Our human rights, what we can expect and how we expect to be treated is enshrined in the Constitution. If you read Articles 16 to 20, like about 26 or something like that. Read those things. Let me look exactly because I have it in front of me right now, the Constitution.
Well,
while you
looking for that, my fear too, do you think the possibility exists with your case and others that this could end up being a constitutional nightmare for the present and the future with regards to people and their children and what one will be taught to them, one, what will be done to them, and three, how they may be governed by the courts or the government of our country? That's a scary thought.
But I'll tell you one thing. A very scary notion is to have a court that does not respect law and order. That's a very scary notion. I could tell you that. If you have people who don't respect law and order, our government, see, I always try to teach people about the three branches of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. The executive and the judiciary, the legislature is what you see in terms of parliament enacting laws. You get what I'm saying? Then you have the second branch of government, which is the executive. The executive is the cabinet. Those people who make those decisions that affect our lives, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the judiciary. It's the third branch of government. You hear that? They're the third branch of government. That's a legal tenet that I'm speaking about, a legal document, the separation of the doctrine of the separation of powers. So they are to do things effectively, but they're never supposed to come together and collude to abuse. They're supposed to keep each other in check.
But obviously,
and I can tell you one thing.
They're not caring that it is given that appearance of evil. So it doesn't seem as if they are appearing to even feel that, okay, we're the judge, the jury, and the executioner, it would seem.
I'm glad we're using seemingly. So that's well said.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you much, Ms. Missick.
My thing is,
yes.
But thank you so much, Ms. Forbes.
Great
appreciate
question.
It.
Yes, great questions. Let me see if we can get one more in the interest. It's 5:20 in the interest of time. And I definitely would, I think we can read a little bit more, do a little bit more research on this.
I want people to read Ms. Gardner, Article 52. Go to the Constitution and read Article 2, which tells us that the Constitution is the supreme law. Then read Article 52. that tells us that government is there to enact laws for the peace, order, and good governance. And I can't see taking children from a good mother to be aided by any of that view. And then, of course, the most important of it all is the preamble. The preamble is the purpose of our Constitution. And our preamble says that I ought to be guaranteed that we have an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law.
Now that's a fact. Now that's a fact.
Christian values and the rule of law. So read those three things. That number 50, Article 2, the Supreme Law, and any law that is not consistent with the Supreme Law is you need to quickly get rid of that. Law reform, the AG office, the law reform section need to quickly make amendments to our laws if it's causing this much problems. Okay? Then you read 52, what government is there to do. And then you read the most important part of it, the preamble. We are a Christian nation, and God bless me with those children. No court can take them away. And unless I have done something that warrants them being taken away, and I've not done that. And they know I've not done it because they couldn't say it too.
I mean, you shared some powerful information. Seemingly the greatest victim of it all, the greatest victims are the children caught in the middle. The voices, someone saying, yes, you know, the voices that cannot speak for themselves. And so that's the sad thing about it. But let me
Mommy is speaking for them, because let me tell you something, Ms. Gardner. I have been asking time and time again for the court to call my children into the court to speak from day one. From day one, Ms. Gardner, I have been asking every court. If you look at every court document that I filed pursuant to Section 3 of the Child Protection Act, 3 or 4, because they come together jointly. If you read 3 and 4, okay, I think it's in either subsection 4 or rule or section 4, right? But it tells you that the views of the children is paramount. I've been asking the courts. When I went before Justice Lauren Klein, I asked him, call my children, please, into the court. They are both intelligent children. They can speak for themselves. When the judge wanted my children to go to baseball and to take my weekends away to give it to the father, she claimed she called my children into court. And you know what my children said when they came out of that court? I tell you no lie. Honest to God, I'm telling you all no lie in what I'm saying. My children said that the judge lied because they were able to hear her behind the closed doors. They were listening and was saying that some of the things that she was saying was not what they said. So, but in any event, she took the children and talked to them then. Why they ain't talking to them 2 years later? My daughter turned 16. My son is 10, and they're intelligent children. I'm telling you. Children go into courts all the time and speak. If a child becomes a rape victim, you know that child could go in the front of a court. If the court assesses that they're able to speak, the court can actually listen to the evidence. They don't even have to say, okay, well, you know what? The child is of young and tender age, so we need to be cautious as to, you know, certain things. They will give a cautionary statement with regard to that child's evidence. But children all the time give evidence in court, in open court. Why my children can't speak in open court? I'm asking for them to speak.
Good. You have some good reasoning. Good reasoning. Sound reasoning, I should say, not just good. And like I said, I think we need to research a little bit more, and it would be great to have you come back on the show. I see corruption and dishonesty. It's a sad situation. It's really a sad situation. My heart goes out to you as a mother. So I'm talking just from a simple human, not even from a legal perspective, just as a simple one human being to another, mother to another. My heart goes out to you, and definitely.
Let me also add this to you, Ms. Gardner. I am one of the attorneys. If you look at my page, I am one of the attorneys who have actually advised and trained members of social services who is that arm that deals with children, okay? Me. So what I'm saying, I don't say that because, I don't know what I'm saying. I overstand the law. I am one of the legal advisors for the government who have spoken on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General to members or to the agency, Social Services Department, with regard to children matters, child welfare matters. I am the person who, if there's an issue, I am one of the persons, I would say, who, if when there is an issue according to law, or there's a situation they need to find out about, who they can call. You understand what I'm saying to you, Ms. Gardner? Okay. And if anybody goes on my page, they can see where I was recently given a token of appreciation from the Department of Social Services here in Grand Bahama. I spoke that morning and the judge spoke that evening. So I'm not speaking just to be heard or speaking because, oh, pity on me and cry. No, I'm speaking law.
Right.
I'm speaking law.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you so much for that addition. Let's see if we can get, it's 5, like I said, maybe we can get one more. Let me see your comment. I don't want to miss, we had several from the group. We can just entertain one more and then we can close. And then we can extend the invitation, like you said, for you to return. Okay, so someone is agreeing. This is very sad. They're saying that that's exactly what needs to happen. They need to bring the children to the court. So that's someone agreeing with you. Someone else with the same comment. Okay, well, let's do something positive. And yeah.
Can I make one more quick question, Ms. Missick? What is now your current position as it relates to you being an attorney working in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas? How has that affected you overall in terms of being an attorney and representing your living?
Well, the thing about it is my help comes from the Lord. See, I'm a believer. So I recognize the promotion comes from God. Promotion doesn't come from man. So I'm not fed or intimidated by what man can do to me. I have much more fear of God than I do man. And what I do is not acting out of order. I've done it their way. I continue to do it their way. But what I'm not going to do is subject myself to evil. You see, I believe that what I'm doing is what needs to be done in order to educate people, because obviously the ones who need to know are not concerned about it. So maybe, you remember there was a story about Jesus when he talked about the parable of the wedding feast, and they had it set up for all of the guests that they had planned it for. And when they didn't show up, then he called and went out in the streets and called for other people. So if they're not going to sit down and appreciate the knowledge, then maybe there are other people out there who will do it. But my help comes from the Lord. I don't have to be an attorney for that help. My help comes from the Lord, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who will open up doors when when man seems to close the doors.
God bless you for that. God go with you.
Yeah, thank you.
May I ask a question here, Dave?
Go ahead. I think this will be our last question. Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to get her opinion on how she thinks this is going to affect the children. Could they ever grow up to be happy husband, wife, or what? How is this situation, in her opinion, nobody knows, but normally, how would it affect them? Because from my side,
this is how it's going to affect, and you're correct. Dr. Mark, you're absolutely correct. And that is what concerns me, no doubt, as a mother. How is this all going to affect my children? Because it has certainly affected me. I will tell you no lie. I've come a long way. But I will tell you this. The Bible tells me that all things work together for the good. Not some. All things. So what comforts me in what all that I'm going through, and even what my children are going through? Because see, my life was beautiful. I had a beautiful life. I had my 2 parents, mommy and daddy, and, and everything was hanky-dory. And then at 10, my father died. And then at 22, my mother died suddenly. And guess what? I wasn't used, this happening to me. I wasn't used to these things. But guess what? When I look back over my life and think things over, I can truly say that I've been blessed and I have a testimony. So I know one thing. Those children God is shaping them, because that's what I'm praying for in the midst of what they're going through. God permitted it to be done, and he knows why. Satan asked for this to happen. That's what happened. Satan, just like Job, I believe, asked, okay, she on here talking, but she love you, and she love you, and her daddy talking, but he praying, like how brother Dave Williams talk about her daddy talking, but he praying for rain to stop and do it. Okay, we could do her in. I need you to do her in. And guess what I say? In all things, not my will, but God's will be done. And the children that I've trained them in the way of the Lord as well. So while it is, I do things, understanding the wisdom that I implore has to be done, because I do it for many others all the time. At the end of the day, I recognize also, even though I'm saddened by it in the flesh, that guess what? God understands. There's some things I don't understand. I would have liked to have my parents here today. I would have liked to have my mommy still alive. I would have liked to have my dad still alive. I would have liked to have my sister who died last year still alive. I would have loved the comfort of life. But guess what? I can say, according to Psalms 119 and 99, not 99, Psalms 119 and 71, that indeed it was good that I was afflicted, that I may learn his decrees. And I believe that the same thing is going to happen for my children. They're going through this, and it's a sad state of affairs, but they're not the only children who are going through things like this. Some children going through worse things than this. Imagine that. And imagine that I'm a lawyer who could at least go to the court and fight for myself. Imagine the man and woman who can't do that for themselves. There are some mothers who've reached out to me David ain't got the first cent. And they gotta, I speak for those women. I speak for some man out there who in front of the courts, like my friend Kashad, when he told me that they had done the magistrate kept adjourning the matter, and I said, let's go to the court now. And I spoke for him. I broke ranks with the comfort of evil men to stand up for righteousness. So guess what? At the end of the day, maybe the situation may cause my children to rise up and speak for other children, because that's why we go through things. You cannot help people and deliver people if you're not experiencing the fight. So I'm experiencing the fight. So I'm going to help some other women and help some other people who are receiving injustices. And my children, I pray that they will be able to do the same, whether I'm alive or not, when they come out of this.
Amen. Amen. Well, we're praying with you that your children will be all that God called them to be. And we know God hold strong and courageous. So may they stand regardless. This has been a most interesting 1 hour and a half. I want to thank everyone for their comments and contribution, and we will announce the day when you will be back. Definitely, we need to continue this conversation. But for now, I turn it over now to the one and only. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gardner. It was a pleasure meeting you as well.
Pleasure.
God bless you.
Mr. David Williams.
Yes, I just want to go to the Facebook. The comments, Beryl says, continue to be strong. Carlton Williams says, why do we need an attorney to get justice? Corey Pender says, oh, for the grace of God. Corey Pender also says they will grow to have certain resentment for the courts and the system based on their childhood experience. Timothy Blair says he's praying. Siobhan Hollis want to know if you have a contact number. Siobhan Hollis also, remember, she works with children also. The court system
462-3434, 462-3434, or 820-8772. And I want to send a shout out to my very good friend, to Michelle. I sent a shout out earlier to my friend Veronica. There's so many of them who are on this today, who I'm sure is on. I see my friend, childhood friend Shavanda, I believe she's on. I love you, because these people have been supporting me, have helped me through this, because this is difficult, Brother William. So thank you for all of those. Timothy, all of them.
Okay, Carter's Road says God is going to make this test your greatest testimony, and your enemies your footstool. Winning season said this place is so messed up. Beryl Flanders said that's the only way I know of. And plus, we have a number of persons tuning in on YouTube. So, Anishka, we agree. You say you will be in town, Lord's willing. Spare your life, my life next week. So I guess you might want to come in directly in studio. No problem. We'll have our guests who will talk about the men's event, and then we'll switch to you. So we're inviting persons to join us 4 p.m. Don't meet us there. They ought to beat us there. Next week, Sunday, on this program, Transforming Lives for Part 2. We'll continue on the radio for at least half an hour, and then we got another hour or so on the Facebook, the Zoom, and the YouTube link. Folks, you've been listening to this program, Transforming Lives on Global 99.5. On behalf of my co-host, Jackie Gardner, Anishka Missick, we want to say thanks. Thanks for a wonderful show. And we always end by reminding us that there's nothing more important at the end of the day than eternal life, because at the end of the day, we wishing the best for Anishka Missick, but if for any reason she fall asleep, the only thing that will matter is having that relationship, and she has professed and confessed it. So we have no doubts in it. Having that relationship with Christ, who alone gives you eternal life. Folks,
Christ,
we just
for Christ I'll die. Yes.
yes, and so we sign off officially, but the Zoom room will be open for a while if persons still want to talk and share with you. Thank you, everyone. And now you can unmute your mic and maybe just exchange in the